There is no view or opinion that will be heard that will cause an offence. We agree? Everyone is entitled to express their perspective on this agenda. The idea of this is that as Bringing Hope, we've been asked and working in partnership, and I really want to thank BCU, Birmingham City University, because they've actually opened up the doors and allowing us to be hosts. Are you guys comfortable? Because it's kind of funny talking down and people kind of feels like I'm in power. And there's been a big power change this morning, so we don't know what's going to happen. So I might as well get used to it just when we forgot.
Yes.
So the only other thing I will do, I'm your host today, so I'm going to try my best to pull the time back, but we're here until 7 o'clock. And we have to leave the premises by 7:15. I don't know where people have parked, so if you've parked in the car park opposite, that shuts at 9, so you've got time. If you've parked in the multi-storey, have change in your pocket, it will cost you a bit more. So really just welcome, and I'm not going to explain what today is about. We've got learned people on the agenda who's going to do that, to explain why we are here and what we're looking to achieve from this. And if people do arrive in, don't be distracted, but just let them come in and sit down. So welcome to you all. And first of all, I really want to welcome the Police and Crime Commissioner, David Jameson, who's going to come and just explain, really, as it says on the agenda, about today, why we're here, and really welcome you all on behalf of the Police and Crime Commission. So David Jameson.
Thank you very much indeed, Robin, and thank you very much for pulling this event together here today. Can I firstly say a very special welcome to you all, and thank you very much for coming firstly, and for your huge interest that you've shown in the issues we're going to discuss today. If I just briefly tell you why I've got involved with this Gangs and Violence Commission which I've set up, and then I'll try to say a little bit about where I think that you can be of assistance. Bishop Derek Webley is going to cover a little bit later on the issues to do with what exactly the Gangs and Violence Commission are doing. We have our police officers, Acting Assistant Chief Constable Alex Murray is also going to cover some of that from a police angle as well. But if I could just say very briefly this, what we found last year, what the police were coming back to me and saying, is that there'd been a spike in violence and gang activity in parts of Birmingham, particularly the centre of Birmingham, Aston, Newtown in particular, were those areas which they mentioned. And there had been some pretty nasty things happen. There'd been knife crime, there'd been a couple of 3 discharges of guns, there'd been a murder or 2. These were serious things that were happening to people. And then there was some activity that was going on that could have actually made things worse. We could have actually had a shootout in that area with all the serious consequences that would have had for the neighbourhood. So what I recognised then, talking to the police, remember I'm not the police, these guys are the uniform of the police, I'm the person that holds them to account. What I recognised was this was not a problem which you could arrest your way out of. And you know, just seeing in the last few weeks a 17-year-old being given a long prison sentence for murdering an 18-year-old, I'm thinking, is this what we want for our society? Is this 21st century Birmingham and Britain? Is this good enough for us? And it is not. And that's where our starting point is with those young people and their ambition and what we want them to achieve and what we want them to do. I went out into the area just before Christmas last year and I spoke to a lot of people. It was mainly the mums I was talking to. What struck me is that many of the mums and dads and parents, they'd given up, not through any fault of their own, but they were saying, I'm just shutting the door now, I can't cope with what's happening out on the streets, it's too much for me, I can't cope. Now that's worrying, when good people, the vast majority of the people in these areas are good, decent, upright people, when they're saying, I can't deal with this, I can't cope with it, that's a very worrying time, because that's a sort of breakdown in the general sort of moral structure of the area. And what one of the mums said to me, in her own way, she said, what we need to be doing is to re-empower to do something for ourselves. And that's really what these events are all about. Because the police will help out, will be the service of last resort, but also do a lot of good work in crime reduction as well. The council will do work, other faith groups and others will do work, but in the end, the solution has to come from the people of the area. We have to empower the ordinary men, women and children in that area to actually look after themselves and set the standards for their own community. So we set up the Gangs and Violence Commission, and delighted to say that Dr. Dr. Carver is going to take on this forward, and he's going to write up the account of what we're doing. So Dr. Carver Anderson will take this forward in the next month. We want to plan a vision of how we're going forward. But in the meantime, there's a number of events that are going on as well, which are helping empower people. This morning, we were out on the Soho Road. My Assistant Police and Crime Commissioner, Ashley Bertie, and many from my office who are here today, had organised a clean-up, a litter pick. And do you know what it did? It got lots of people of different faiths, different groups. The schools came out, different people came out, working with the City Council, ourselves and others, came out and suddenly for this morning took over their area. They were clearing up the area, they were getting rid of some of the graffiti, they were dealing with the litter problems. People getting back empowered to do something about their own community. And if your community looks a mess, if it looks as if somebody else runs it, then the people in the area are disempowered, and it's an area that will attract that type of crime. So well done to all those this morning. But what it did as well, I'm delighted to say one of our councillors here, Wasim Rastafari is here. What it did as well, Wasim, was it triggered off lots of activity throughout the whole city, didn't it? Right the way across the city, I think there were 10 other places where there were people doing the same thing. So we started something in one area, and suddenly it spilled out to the other areas because other people wanted to do something, because they too realised this could make a difference to their lives. I see three parts to what we're doing. The bit that we're involved in today is with the faith groups, and all faiths as well. It's not one faith, it's all faiths involved in that. There's education. And Ashley, myself and some of my staff have been out to some of the schools in the area, and we've been talking about the challenges of some of the youngsters, particularly boys. It's almost entirely boys. 11, 12, 13, beginning to play truant, finding their way into sort of minor criminality. Some of them, a tiny minority, are then moving into serious criminality, which has a huge and massive disproportionate effect on their local community. So we're talking there about a really quite small number of youngsters who are having a huge disproportionate effect on what's happening in their neighbourhood. We're looking to see what sort of new activities we can bring about. We're looking at the Duke of Edinburgh Award. How can we get some of these youngsters involved in things? Because the third prong of what we're doing is to do with industry, commerce, and how we get new investment into the area. How can we bring the good quality employment and jobs and training into the area so that we give genuine opportunities to those young people to find alternatives to going on the streets and getting involved in gangs and then trading drugs or whatever else. And I think we've got to ask ourselves a question: why is it some of those young lads are disengaged, and what are the ways through to getting that engagement and getting them involved again? So what are we doing as a faith group? And I think this is what we're going to be seeking today from you, is some response now as to what we can do in various faith groups to actually help in this particular issue. It's our young are our future, and if we get that wrong, then the future won't be right. So the questions I would like to ask everyone today is just how do we engage with some of those hard to reach youngsters? We've got some of them who come to the churches and some of them who come to the mosques and the gurdwaras, but how do we get to those that probably don't? How do we get to those that are actually hard to reach, those that are actually on the edge of being antisocial, those who are on the edge of criminality. What do we do to actually reach those young people? And all I would say to you today is that if you do nothing else today, don't leave today before you've asked not somebody else the question, but ask yourself the question, what is it that I am going to do to make a difference to this community and to young people? If each one of us does that and finds a way through and adds that together, we will have a solution to some of the problems that we are currently encountering. So again, thank you very much for coming. I'm thoroughly looking forward to hearing some of your stories and what you have to say. But I think together, working together with our faith, with our beliefs, our commitment, I think we can make a real difference. Thank you very much.
We recognise that the whole issue around gang and violence is a persistent threat within the community. And the community is likened onto that village, because no matter how we coexist, we live in that same environment, and I think we all have a commitment to seeing this city strive and go forward. So it's really important that the voices of our young people actually have an integral part to play in developing the interventions that go forward. It's important to underpin that not all the recent firearms change is because of a situation that's been there all the time. There's demographic changes that have contributed to that has had a bearing on the area. And as members of the community, many of us have been given information and been told about many things that are contributing to this. I think what is very important is that though we all have our own experience to bring to the table, we don't allow that in any way to cloud our minds from hearing what is happening in the realities of other people's world. So members of the community have expressed a genuine need to see something that's not just done to them, but done with them. Something that's going to be sustainable, and actions that are not from top down but bottom up, where the voices of those who are affected in many, many different ways has a hub, a forum called a commission into which they can place that information. We can't get away from the reality that any form of gang or violence, whether it's knife or guns, has a devastating impact on community life. Every one of us, I believe, here has been affected somehow, whether directly or indirectly. We're not immune from that reality. And the day when we feel it is someone else's problem, it's a dangerous position to take. It can happen in any one of our families at any time, and it's not because the individual that it's happened to was involved in a kind of colourful life. It can happen. But for us to move this forward, it requires a holistic approach. It requires the teachers, social workers, housing officers, youth workers, employment advisors, and many, many others, including faith leaders, to have an active role and to play that role to contribute to how we can make the vulnerable safer. This is specifically for faith leaders and others who are linked into that, because oftentimes what's left out is that spiritual side of an individual. And those who are involved within the prison system, particularly from a chaplaincy point of view, would share with us how often when people are in that environment and they're on their own and they need someone to really engage with, how that even if they have no faith, and it's important to understand that the faith leaders don't only function for those who have a faith. Those who have no faith are entitled to call upon a faith leader, even if they have no faith. our duty is to be there as a means of humanity, reaching out to the person irrespective of the crime they have or haven't committed, to be able to understand where on the journey of life that person may be. So it is vitally important that we don't lose sight of the fact that the Commission is not just being set up just to meet a target. It's really about dealing with those complex and challenging issues that has resulting and persistent problems that we need to define, and we need to find a way to gather evidence that allows us to understand how we can address this with the involvement of other agencies as well. Later on, you'll be hearing directly from Dr. Carver Anderson, who will be taking us on a journey that the information that is being gathered to assist the Commission is not just based on someone saying something, it's tested. It's tested in a scientific and a rigorous way, but an ethical way. And he will walk us through that journey, because those of us who are on the Commission have been greatly enhanced in our thinking and our understanding by the rigor of the work that he has undertaken in ensuring that when we launch the recommendations, there is some evidence and there's some substance that can be tested, and hopefully it can maintain a long-term situation in going forward. So as we consider the various challenges this afternoon, it's important that we ask ourselves, from a faith perspective, how should we be playing a role in the lives of our young people and in the community in general? How should we be seeking to influence what young people do, or probably not influence what they do? And how can we help young people to understand that they are a part of the solution to the very situation that we are grappling with? We need to ask ourselves, what are the mechanisms that we use, that we engage, to help us to become more involved with what young people do, the issues they are facing, and how they arrive at their decisions. I recall one time there was a discussion going on around young people, and this was about 3 weeks ago. I was out of the country, I won't say where, and it was about young people being the future. Yet at the meeting there was no young people there. And the slot the young people were given was the last slot for the day, just before the conference closed. And it was a young person from England who was with others from America, Canada and the Caribbean, who gave us as adults a real roasting. Because what she was saying was, if we are a part of the solution, why aren't we being respected and spoken to on equal par? Not given a leg up, but if we are really a part of this. And I want to say the Commission has taken that very seriously. Hence why the experts that sit on the Commission, engaging in doing something, there is a specific arm for the young people. How do the young people see things and their contribution into this? So as I conclude, what I want to say to us today is to really think outside of the box, to also have an open mind that some of the things that we have been doing with real sincerity may actually not be the best course of action. But let us listen to others who may have engaged in another way. Because at the end of the day, what we are doing today with many others in different strands is going to make a difference. And we never know, out of this meeting and the meetings to come through other strands and the final recommendations and conclusions could mean that my grandson or grandsons may actually have a life because of something that we and others may have thought we're far removed. We just never know what the little contribution that you may feel is insignificant may be that nugget that actually saves a life, spares a life, or causes someone to walk away from a certain life, or someone in it to see a door to come out of it. So I wish this event today well. I must apologise from the outset that I have an appointment that I have to go to London for, so I've got to get on the 5 o'clock train. So I came because
I sat there thinking that I've been here before, and I still pretend to be young, and I still like to think that I'm young, but I've been involved in issues that are being discussed today for over a decade and a half. I think at the age of 19, I was sitting down with people like Bobby. He was here somewhere, isn't he? He's at the back as always. That's where people like Bobby and Sama, going back to say 2000, 2001, I was part of an organisation called the Handsworth Recreation Group, which a few like-minded friends set up to look at how we can engage. And it's predominantly, we had Bobby and Stammer, but there were the young people like myself involved at that particular time, looking at how we can address some of the issues around disaffected young people. And I've been sitting here thinking, what is it we're doing now that we did back then, but and to ensure that we don't make the same mistakes? Because there were a considerable amount of mistakes made back then. The Commissioner referred to, we can't arrest ourselves out of this. And I think Mohammed mentioned earlier that we did take out, or the police did take out through arrest, a substantial amount of the Burgers and the Johnson crew. But that hasn't resolved the issue. And Bishop Webley mentioned that we did things, we can't be doing things to the city, to the communities. We've got to do things with the city and with the communities. And those are the two fundamental mistakes. Well, the resting of it, that was important, but that couldn't be the solution, and we thought that was going to be the solution. But the things that we did to the communities, and I was part of that. And back then I used to shout, "Here is Bobby," always walking in and out. I referred to you earlier on. So just for reference, I name check Bobby because he'll have a go at me later for not name checking it. But back then I was always, now as I was introduced, I'm the cabinet member responsible for community safety in Birmingham and also a council for the East East Ward. But I was a heavy critique of the way the council approached things and other public sector institutions. We had the Learning and Skills Council back then, we had Connections. We set up something called the Aston and Handsworth Operational Group, AHOG they called it. Or before that there was the Bronze, Gold, Silver and Bronze groups. There was all these things set up by people who felt they had the answers to the issues that we have here today. The answers don't lie with the council. The answers don't lie in the police. The answers do not lie in any of the public institutions. They've changed their names, but we had government office back then as well. The answers lie in this room amongst the communities. And it's you that we need on our side, leading the way. The council, I make a firm commitment here today, the council will support this commission. We are supporting this commission, and we will implement the recommendations if you hold us to task, because the accountability is really important. The police, the commissioner is here, the assistant chief constable's left, but there's a firm commitment there. But the solutions have to be driven by the community. And I think I must pay tribute to the commissioner for setting up this commission. And not only setting it up, but making the majority of the commission all about the practitioners from the community who know about the issues. Right? So you've got Robin, you've got Carver, you've got Bobby, you've got Lloyd, you've got Lincoln, you've got Joe. These are people who've been around, like many of us for decades looking at these particular issues. They are the experts, and it's upon them to drive this particular commission forward, engaging with our faith communities, engaging with our young people, engaging with communities alike. I'm not saying that there's the answers, they aren't, we should totally ignore the institutions in this. There is expertise within the institutions that can help us in terms of this commission, but this has to be a community-led thing. So we can't probably make the same mistakes that were made back then. We need to find, arresting it might be a short-term solution, but we need to look at the medium and long-term solution, and we have to look at a holistic approach. We have to look at issues around housing, we have to look at issues around employment, we have to look at issues around skills, and we have to look at what the future of this city, right? We've got HS2 coming, We've got HSBC who are relocating their UK headquarters here. We've got to look at the job opportunities that are coming. And this is the message that we need to take to our young people. Right into the schools, and I'm not just talking about secondary school, we just start younger than that. We need to go to our primary schools, right? And look at engaging those young people, looking at and giving them the positive role models that they can relate to. People who, who've got the street cred, but also can talk to them about some of the mistakes they've made possibly, and also look at the opportunities, because these young people have to aspire to go on to be the future leaders of our cities. And we have to create an environment in this city where they feel that there are opportunities for them, and equality and fairness needs to be at the heart of that. And I know there's issues around that within the local authority. I know there's issues around that around public sector institutions. We've touched upon stop and surge, but we've come on leaps and bounds in terms of moving forward on stop and surge. I'm not saying we've totally eradicated the disproportionality issues. I'm not saying it's absolutely equal and fair, but we've come on a long way. We need to do a lot more, and I know the Commissioner and his assistant are very, very keen to do that. So these are the important things that we need to do. And I was at a meeting with Bishop Webley a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about a meeting, the first ever meeting that the first ever time I met Bishop Webley, he was on the police authority. He wasn't chairing at that time. He was a rep for F3, as he was called back then. And there was some tension on the Lascelles Road, right? I might as well tell this story because I met Bobby and Stam and everyone else as a result of this. I set up in 2001 my first ever play scheme or holiday group in the summer of 2001 in Holt School, within the Leisure Centre as it was back then. There's a new building here today. And there was some tension between young people from my group, which is predominantly an Asian group, and the group that Wesley and Race and Junior and Stam and Bobby were running on the AstroTurf during the lunch break on Lascelles Road. News spread that there's about to be a race riot on Lascelles Road. And Khalid Mahmood, who was mentoring and guiding me at that particular time, the Member of Parliament for Prayer, had just been elected. So you had riots kicking off everywhere across the country, in Burnley and Oldham and everywhere else. And I had a call from Khalid from Indonesia. He was on his first ever parliamentary delegation, so he was really excited. He would have been a colleague of yours in Parliament at that time. And he was effing and blinding at me on the phone saying, there's about to be a riot kick-off, can you get in there and sort it out? And I said, look, there was scuffle between kids, but what's the issue here? And he had people like Lynn Holman, the then chief executive, on the phone, talking to him about this. At the same time, he had phoned Stammer, who was his new brethren on the streets, the new MP, and Stammer were the best of friends. And me and Stammer met up, and we both, obviously were deeply hurt by the comments of the MP, but news has spread from people within the community and further afield that there was going to be a race riot. So there was a meeting called at Hull Leisure Centre where we didn't know what the issue was. We thought it was a minor thing, but it was clearly erupting. And what we realised then was that yes, the reason it became an issue was because there was a scuffle between two groups of people from different ethnic origins. The rest of the play scheme, weeks 5 and 6 of that play scheme, were run together as one. And we had young people there, and me and Stammer and Bobby have since, and others who were involved in that meeting have been the best of friends. So when we look back at the key lesson to be learned there is we need to look beyond ethnicity, we need to look beyond faith. These are our community, these are our kids, irrespective of who we are. There are realistic issues that exist in our localities. We need to ensure that what we're doing is, and today the work that the Commissioner's led on in terms of the cleanups, that's about creating a sense of pride, a sense of identity, a sense of belonging within our communities, that everyone feels part of them. Today it wasn't, we weren't divided in terms of faith or ethnicity. It was all people within that particular hood, as Robin referred to earlier, coming together with the authorities to seek agreements. And so we need to come together, we need to unite. And my final comment is to the faith communities. At the most difficult of times, in the last 7 years, we've had to cut £700 million out of our budget, serious austerity. We've got further challenges coming forward. The one section of the community that's really stepped up and taken ownership and taken the issues like no other has been our faith community in this city. So I want to thank you, and that's to all the faith communities. And I was with the council, the faith leaders group here this morning, and I said the same thing. What you've done has been quite remarkable. You look at the food banks and the soup kitchens that have been set up within the communities. You look at the work that the faith communities are doing with our refugee communities and some of the challenges around that. You look at what the faith communities are doing with the homeless and vulnerable and destitute within our city centres and elsewhere. So thank you for what you've done. And I'm so pleased that one of the first key events of this commission has been with faith communities, but I know you will again step up like you've stepped up before and support the process and get involved in providing and supporting the solutions that come out of this commission. So once again,
obligation here. Now, Dr. Martin Glynn, one of my colleagues, he has developed a criminal justice pipeline. And that is literally saying that there is something in this. So when I ask the questions within the commission framework, and can I just say that there's a number of things happening within the commission at the moment. And this here represents part of it. So this is one of the arms. We have the young people arm, which we're asking questions to the young people. We have the specialist providers like Reverend Robin Thompson and Lincoln and Bobby and Joan and Lloyd and others who are part of the expert witness, if you please, who have something to say. So when the research starts to triangulate and make sense of every part, we will then come up with empirical data, not just anecdotal to say because I feel that. So this criminal justice pipeline talks about marginalization, social disorientation, criminality, negative affiliation, and believe me, friends, prison, mental health, and death are outcomes of some of what we see in our communities. We've buried some, we've spent a lot of time in prison, and it's disturbing to me. So this pipeline here, we're making sense of the pipeline. So that's what the commission is doing. We're making sense. Where does marginalization come into the midst? Where does social disorganization? Where does criminality, which includes violence and so on, negative affiliation, where does it come in? Why do young men and young women from a particular demography get involved so heavily? And why does that age group of young men and young women? We've seen that from the police statistics. And it's not a black issue. It's important to reiterate that. Next one, please, Rob. Thank you. Press coverage. I think Mohammed mentioned that. This press coverage, what does this really mean? Is there anything behind the language of moral panic? Next one, please, Rob. What I think is important here, as a perspective, we as an organization, which is the commission, I will be using a particular model to make sense of this. And it's a faith-centered interventions by Ballard and Pritchard, 2006. And it's saying here that there's a current issue which has been raised by the commission. It's current. It hasn't gone, it's current. Then there's questions and analysis, which this is a part of the questioning and analysis. And then there is the theological reflection and faith action. Theology is about faith, in effect. What does your group have to say about responding to this very challenging situation in Birmingham? And then we go, if our faith groups are not involved, then that's a big issue, because I've heard Councillor Wazim said faith is important. I've heard you say faith is important in the city. Next one, please, Bill. Making sense of the situation and challenges. So there's two key questions. These questions we're asking. From a research perspective, these are questions. What are some of the key thoughts, beliefs, values, and perceptions and experience of individuals, both perpetrators and victims? So we need to understand that. Because when we are going to write the report, whether there are gaps or there needs to be intervention or perspective, then we need to understand this. Next one, please, Rob. My role in this is to develop a methodology. A methodology that helps us to understand more fully the challenges. Is this new? Well, you know what's different here? There is a community-led approach that we are now involved That's what's different here. And it's more strategic, it's academic, it's empirical. That is different. Other times things have been done to the community. And I think I would like to commend this approach to say that there is a partnership between community, the city, the commission, faith groups. So there's an interdisciplinary perspective here. No one perspective can deal with this issue. No one perspective. No one denomination, no one faith can deal with it. So there has to be an interdisciplinary perspective. And that's what this is. So community-led partnership. There's interdisciplinary approaches. Solution focus. We are not problematizing everything. We are literally looking at how we deconstruct the problem. Because every one of these men and women, there's someone's son or daughter or family. There's no one that is in the prison system or involved in criminality or guns and gang that is not someone's son or daughter. So we need to humanize them, and that's what I hope will emerge out of this research. But again, I can't predict what will emerge from the write-up of this research, but I think it's important to be very open and flexible. So there's going to be the fieldwork. This is part of our fieldwork, if I'm honest. And there's going to be an analysis, and then from the analysis there's going to be recommendations, and there are going to be, as was stated, we have to hold the city to account. It's going to be like, in inverted commas, a sacred text for the city about how to deal with this issue. Next one, please, everyone. A few minutes. Finally, making sense of the situation. There are certain key components from an ethical framework that we believe is very important. Ethically, we do not believe that as a commission we should do the work which we're doing without love. Now, love is a deliberate and proactive expression of care, compassion. So everyone that we talk to who are labeled already, we got to love them. We say that in prison. There's also the issue about integrity and accountability and commitment. Next one, please, Rob. We believe in the unity together. So why it's not an us and them? It's our city. Birmingham belongs to us. I don't want someone else to own Birmingham when I'm here and I'm owning it with us. So everyone who has an expertise and understanding and perspective is coming together. So humility. There's no one expert here. And finally, reflexivity, meaning that we reflect on what we're doing. Next slide, I think I'm coming to the end soon. Just quickly, this is my thoughts from my other perspective as a faith man myself. It's to say, I believe we need to build hope. I use this as an acronym. I believe that believing change is possible. I think we need to understand the issues very much. We can't assume we have to understand the issue. I believe we need to all be involved. I don't think it's them and us, it's an involvement of all. Again, that notion of love, which is the deliberate act of engagement in care, dedication, and hope, helping others, opportunity to serve, planning to support, empowerment of others. I think there's a framework in this, because when we come up with our recommendation, I hope this would be in the recommendation. Final slide, I think. Commitment towards partnership and change. I believe it starts right here. I believe it is tested by action. I believe it can be measured. That's why we're doing the research. And I believe it creates reliability. A community will say that you've taken our issues seriously. We can rely on what you're saying. Is there another slide?
More. Okay, so like any research project we do, we start by doing, if not a systematic, then at least a systemised literature review. So we've carried out a systemised review of literature that have been published in peer-reviewed journals. I'm not suggesting that's the only way to do it. And what we've uncovered are some of the facts that I'm going to start sharing with you today. What does research published in peer-reviewed journals tell us about faith-based interventions in secure settings? First, we know that they vary. There's no one model of how faith-based organisations work in secure settings. And they vary in terms of how they're configured, the approaches they use, who they work with, who they don't work with. So I want that to be borne in mind, really, that, you know, even though I'm going to map what Bringing Hope do, there's no one way to deliver a faith-based intervention in a secure settings. But I think what we can see coming through the literature is that what is common is that most of them operate within this moral framework of hope. And whilst faith may be the determining factor for programme leaders, it's not necessarily the determining factor for participants. Participants across all the studies we reviewed identify with different faiths and with no faiths. Faith-based interventions are important interventions for offenders who are ready to change. So what's really interesting and what really came through our data is that sometimes people are at points of transition, and actually faith-based intervention can be really quite supportive in supporting them through that transitional phase. And also what was exceptionally important, particularly in terms of talking and working with people in prison who are under such strict regimes, is that faith-based organisations attempt to establish relationships characterised by genuineness, warmth, approval, acceptance, encouragement, empathy, sensitivity, and all those relational things, which when you're in prison can be very, very, very important. What are some of the outcomes in the literature of faith-based interventions? Well, they are identified as providing safe environments, therapeutic communities, creating opportunities for offenders to develop supportive and positive relationships. They offer opportunities to access mentoring from prison and through back out into the community. They are often around personal and social development, so that they offer opportunities to develop social and life skills. Participants often speak positively about our faith-based interventions, help them to connect and keep connected with or reconnect with families and wider communities, and they offer a point of escapism from the prison regime, and participants value that they help them to facilitate personal growth. So across the literature we see lots of positive outcomes reported of people's experiences of being involved in faith-based organisation. But what I must also point out is that there are some challenges, there are methodological weaknesses in doing research in this area, that a lot of the literature is based on literature published in the USA. There's very little UK peer-reviewed literature, but what we see is that they do report numerous positive outcomes for those who are supported through this sort of support. So with that in mind, what we try to do is try and see how we could find out what are some of the experiences, what works, what doesn't work from the participants' point of view and other key stakeholders of the Damascus Road Second Chance Programme, which is a partnership between Bringing Hope, HMP Birmingham. It is especially something that has been championed by the Equalities Lead in the prison, who they couldn't deliver, or I couldn't do the project without her contribution. It's designed by a black academic, Dr. Martin Glynn. It's a rites of passage programme delivered over 13 weeks. It's changed slightly, I would argue, since we've done the work, but it still has that basic premise. They use a range of approaches, and they do that on a group basis and a one-to-one basis. It's a black-led, black-designed programme, which at the point of my evaluation was targeted at black men. And I think that actually came through when we look at some of the things that the men reported in prison were very, very key factors to how they experienced the programme. So that's just my aim. My aim was to capture the participants' experiences of being involved in the Damascus Road programme. I wanted not only to focus on the experiences of the participants, the men themselves. I wanted to talk to the prison management, talk to prison staff, talk to family members, talk to people who've been on the programme and were now in the community, and talk to the practitioners delivering the programme. And all of that are pulled together under analysis, and we get to the data. So that was our primary aim. I'm not going to dwell on this, but I spent quite a lot of time in the prison observing. So I was fortunate and privileged enough to see firsthand how the programme was delivered, what worked, what didn't work. I was also privileged enough to hear stories one-to-one and in groups from the men in prison. and also be able to cross-reference that with interviews that I did with the governor, the equalities lead, Bringing Hope, and others. But we can come back and I'm happy to answer questions about my methodology if you so wish. But I think I'm the only one that gets really excited about methodology, and Carver probably. Okay, so what were the key findings from our evaluation? I've just sort of listed quickly what the key findings came out. That there's something about a programme designed and delivered by black men to black men that makes a unique difference. There are some positive benefits from having a programme where people in prison can express faith and spirituality, whether you are of faith, of a different faith, or of no faith. Created a sense of identity, belonging and well-being. The way it was delivered was a validation of black men's lived reality, provided a sense of hope, and it potentially supports desistance, rehabilitation and recidivism. I know I'm running out of time. Okay, but I want to really share some of the data coming through the voices of the men themselves. So this one I'm saying is a recognition of, often black men are stereotyped that they don't know what they've done, they have no remorse, all those ways of constructing and othering black men. Fascinating when you speak to some of the men in prison. So for example, this young man talked about he couldn't really be bothered to go on the programme. I can't be arsed. I thought I can't be bothered. I just wanted to sit in my pad and curl up. And the reason he felt so bad was that he just lost his sister. He was under extreme stress, pressure, sadness. My sister just died. I'd broken up with my partner, so I really didn't feel like doing nothing. I just wanted to sit in my pad and went on the course. And on the first day, I felt a good energy vibe from it. I wrote a letter that day to my partner and to my victim. So there's something about creating those therapeutic, reflective spaces that gets people thinking about their position. This quote is from another participant. I think it was a transitional period for me when I went to prison. I went to prison previously, I'd done 7 years. I met them when what I believe to be a transitional period in my life. I heard about them from word of mouth, from inmates on the wing. They appear to be a beacon of hope amongst people who are also going through transitional periods in their lives, and they want something positive to latch onto. In the darkest places, light can still flicker. An example of how spirituality and faith was really important, because it feels like our cleanse, feels like cleanliness, a holiness, especially when practitioners, when we'll be shaking hands, I feel like he's getting it straight from the source and telling me. So I'm intrigued and listening to every word he says. I sit like this when he's talking because his job is serious, burying dead people and all that stuff. You must get your power from somewhere, as not everyone can do that work. That's God's work that you're doing, and you have to respect that. I know that it's serious. The opportunity to disassociate from notions of blackness, really heavy in the data. When they were talking during one of the sessions, I just broke down and started crying. That is when I felt it was time to stop and come out of this folly. I wrote to my child, I wrote to my son, I even asked him to fill out a questionnaire because I wanted to know about his state of mind and to make him think about what he was thinking.
There was an incident, I believe it looked like it was Aston, and the guys put up in a... Yeah, I didn't want to really say it, but yeah. and the guys turned up in a car, didn't jump up, machetes, but so the issue of violence, the issue whether it's gang related or not, serious violence is an issue in all communities. Now with your work, where you work across different communities, what do you think the barrier is then for a faith leader? What would you
I think essentially,
say?
I think you guys have to kind of take a step outside of the box for a moment,
Yeah,
and have a look at other groups,
yeah,
because essentially you're dealing with the issue that's close to hand.
yeah,
So the people that are in the room right now essentially are working with people, or they're one step away from individuals that are involved in some situation, hence why they're here. We've got a lot of those faith leaders, whatever they're presenting in terms of any congregation of some sort, that's not the priority. But the priority of the young people is possibly survival. Faith is second in their eyes.
right,
They've still got to travel from wherever it is to go to school. They've still got to go to college. They've got to navigate throughout their day, being safe. So even though, again, having a label of faith, it's then trying to make that correlation between or what is the faith saying that is good and what is bad, what can and what I can't do.
Yeah.
But then I've got to live in a community that is deprived, poor education, poor health, poor housing. Everyone in the area is on negativity, a few that's on positivity. I can't find some of those positive individuals, and how do I navigate that with whatever my parents or whatever the so-called faith is suggesting that a person should be living their life. So there's a complete disconnection. So with the faith leaders, they need to essentially understand what the reality is of these young people. And me being other faith community, I see the conversation takes place about what's going on every day on the road is outside, but then you might be inside having a conversation about what's going on in another country, a person that's on, a person that's off. You don't like somebody, and that conversation is more about that as opposed to the issues of young people.
So in moving this issue forward, then, what should we consider as a message should go out to the faith leaders? That's part one. And then how do we go about doing that? And I'm talking Ras, I'm talking Islam, I'm talking Sikh, I'm talking Christian, I'm talking right across the piece, because everybody's in this village. What would you say then? 3 key things you would want to leave
Before I answer the answer the question, sorry, I keep doing that because I ask a question. So, because for me, the question is based on this idea and the perspective that there's a village. My thing is, if people don't want to be a part of the village, then leave them, because they're probably going to be worse stuff for the young people anyway. I would never include somebody into a circle of young people that trust me. And just because you're supposed to be a part of the village that you're there, stay at the side if you want to.
So does that mean you got to earn something? You got to earn that trust, and you got to.
If they want to,
yeah.
That's the point. If they want, if they want to.
You, the individual.
And I think one of the things that generally work is, I don't want to use the word name and shaming, but again, this word about accountability. So all of the people that said that they were coming from all of these groups that represent these groups, when the report and the research gets written, that these things get stated.
Yeah.
That again, we've had another community event, and there's a series of things that are happening, not just in our community, but all communities across the spectrum, and these people never seem to attend. You'll be surprised what that actually does in terms of so-called credibility that people chase in the community, and that's just being real. So I think that's just one thing. I think secondly, it's about essentially engaging with those from those communities that might not have the voice as powerful as the so-called leaders, and how do we nurture those individuals to become voices and advocates within their particular, so it's fighting essentially not the leader but essentially within. Another analogy, I was saying it yesterday in a meeting, that I never talk to head teachers at a school, I talk to the pastoral managers, but they're the people that essentially that you need to essentially engage with. And I think lastly, I think one of the good things about these things is that yes, we come together, yes, we have essentially these meetings, and I think it's important that we kind of sustain the different links between different types of groups. So it's a little bit more than just saying, I'm from this faith, you're from that faith, you have no faith, you don't agree with that faith. Cool. The reality is that we're losing life. Yeah. That's the reality. When we're hearing on the news, Birmingham gun crime capital for a second year running, whether it's true or not, these are the things that essentially people in the community have to address and engage with. And I'll say it again, those of us there's many people I can look around in the room right now that are involved, but something's happening that we're not connecting enough. And I think it's just about making that visible, that we're connecting. I always use the example 2 years ago. Remember those emails that me and Nathan was getting in regards to, apparently there was some sort of beef that was going on between us that I didn't actually know about. So one of the things that we discovered was doing an event where people visibly see us, it challenges some of those negative stereotypes, because again, with those individuals that you're saying to bring in, some of them don't want this. So I'm not of the opinion that I'm going to chase somebody that doesn't want to be a part of something. I'd rather harness the people that are in here. So there's individuals in the room that might represent different faiths, people that have no faith, cool, but all of us essentially want to save lives. And that's what I mean by, are we looking at just faith alone, or are we looking at need? Because a lot of these young boys and young girls in our community, they need help, they need support, they need jobs, they need education. And if we're just thinking about converting people or getting people to be a part of our particular persuasion, you're going to find yourself losing individuals throughout the particular journey. So yes, prison might be quite easy in terms of a person settling down, in the sense that they're with people 24/7, your thoughts are different. But the moment they touch on road, they go back to what? Their reality. If their reality is survival, faith is there, but in a short amount of time if there's no aftercare. And I think that's the most important thing. Stop getting people to convert and embrace. Yeah, it's a good thing in some cases, but what's the aftercare? If you're saying that this faith works for this particular reason, and those individuals agree, but all right, then can you show me how to get a job now? And that's the problem. That's the problem. So everybody wants the glory of, yeah, we've got this big congregation, or we've got certain young people that have worked it from the ends that was now this and now is embraced, but it's still, Shotting is still involved in certain things, and for me, that's the problem that we all need to essentially engage.
I've got a strong belief that the arts manifest the spirit of the age. So for me, this is an important thing for us to be digging into. An example of how this works is, if we go back to when I was younger, in the early 80s, 90s, like we had, the environment that we lived in was totally different to the environment we live in now. The popular music at the time was very conscious, very righteous music. It was either reggae, the Bob Marley, Freddie McGregor, Garlic Silk, all these people, and then it was either the hip hop, and the hip hop was KRS-One, Tribe Called Quest, Public Enemy. They all had conscious music, and at the time, I think like the energies within our community was very conscious. Like the big people, them, our dads and that, would regularly sit down and reason, talk about politics and talk about what's going on in the community, what they can do to change things. And then it changed. So it's like so it changed. It stopped being that, and we came away from our roots. We started to the music that was being played started to be gangster rap then, and the films was Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, and that imagery was pushed on us. For me, at that time, like my life just started to change as well. When this is the same times, my life started to change. We started to this is when we started gangbanging, started robbing, started doing criminal activities on the road. Now I'm not saying that the music is totally to blame, but what I'm saying is it happened in sync. So there's a relationship between the two. Another example is there was when there was riots in America in the 60s, and after those riots, the US government got a report done by the Kerner Commission. It was a Kerner Commission report anyway. Now this report was done, and it came back, and it was stated in the report that the youth that were writing was writing because they had a high self-esteem and a high racial pride, and the music at that time was that same music. Forward to the early 90s, around 92, it happened again. Was it the Rodney King situation made it kick off again? So that was it kicked off again. The riots kicked off again. From that point in time, after that point in time, all the messages and the imagery that came through the music industry and the media was negativity and derogatory. So from that point in time, there was a big change in what the media was pushing, and loads of famous rap artists were asked, and are still asked today, to talk about drugs, guns, and women. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So till this day, artists are asked. Another example of that is Young Buck. So he's a rapper in America. He had a song on his album, on one of his albums, and it was talking about police brutality. The record label says he couldn't put that on his album because it would incite violence against the police. But then they allowed him to put the other 19, 21 tracks talking about killing black people, selling drugs, and all the rest of it. So obviously, like we know that it has an effect. If you study and do a bit of research around the mind and how it works, it shows that the mind can be programmed, and it's programmed by our environment, the information that we intake, the people that we grow up around is programmed. So a lot of us are programmed to think a certain way, and that's because of a lot of the information that we intake. On a personal note, things started to change for me when I started to look into my own history, when I started to look into spirituality. So again, spirituality is a very important thing because it started to teach me a lot about myself, who I am. And at that point in time, it was like, yo, I can't keep living this way. I must be an idiot if I'm going to keep living this way, knowing what I know. So the arts definitely has a role to play. I'm going to let Baija come in because he's going to kind of bring you up to date.
from two different areas.
I'm
as
from
well.
B6.
It's from B6, I'm from Handsworth 21. So basically, the music for me now, I agree largely to an extent what Simba was saying, but I'm a believer that it's the reverse. So I don't think it's the music that's influencing the people, I'm thinking it's the environment that's influencing the music. I say this because there was a time where house and garage was the popular thing and songs were like Bring Me Flowers and things like that. And there was still gang violence. So in every, like you said, going back to the early stage, the music was more conscious. It began to become violent when the racial tensions in America at that time over there was very high. So then that reflected within the music. The problem that I find here in the UK is that the black men, young black men, don't open up, whether it's to their partners, to their parents, could be for many reasons, just not getting along, the parents being absent, always working, fathers not being there, whatever it is. So the music is a way for them to vocalize themselves. It's their only voice. It's the only way you can hear what they are going through. The problem is now is that it's being used as a way to help even convict people. I've seen in recent cases where a guy his music video was used to help convict him. The problem I find with that is, like I've said, is that they're just expressing what's going on in the environment. And just like any other industry, whether it's the business industry, things that have gone on in the banking industry, as we know, government, the people who commit criminal acts are usually the minority within that industry, just like in the music. So it's that by criminalizing or demonizing the people who are doing the music, you're stopping a voice, potential careers, because music, like I said, music is only one of the only ways the kids are able to vocalize themselves and get their message across. Other careers, colleges, university, work opportunities, all these things ain't promoted the way, to the youth, the way drug dealing and music opportunities are promoted. So you'll see that a lot of youths will prefer to do music. One of the other issues, losing train of thought. One of the other issues I have is that by doing that, what's going to replace the music? And if you're going to demonize the kids for doing the music and portraying or talking about the environment they live in, we have to also make sure that the newspapers, the film industry, and everyone else takes responsibility as well. Because it's not just the music that's reflecting what's going on in the environment. Any film where there's, it's predominantly black, we separate it from the film industry, we call it a black film instantly, or a black movie, we separate it, just like everything else. So, yeah, just kind of summing everything up, wrapping. So I say that the music will change ultimately when the environment change, and not the other way around.
And Jason's going to speak from his heart. We need to hear the reality, because we are overrepresented within the criminal justice system. And that's not just black males, that's Asian, that's white. The criminal justice system in the prison is bursting. And you're seeing the marks of that. And unless it's your family member, most of the time, people step away and leave it, because they're locked away, they're tucked away. One of the realities, these individuals are coming back home. So, Jason, I just want you to just share, thank you for coming to share with us the reality of the lived experience from your perspective.
First and foremost, I want to thank the Father God, the Most High, because faith does matter. I'm talking on behalf of 1,500 men in the Green, 1,700 men in Oakwood, 1,200 men in Featherstone. I was a working man, came from a nice family home. I was on a night out with the lads, pulled over in town. I was arrested, charged with firearms offences. I was incarcerated. Ended up in Winson Green prison. I was unmanned for 2.5 years.
literally not knowing am I going home, not knowing my faith, not knowing am I doing 10 years, 15 years, not knowing nothing whatsoever. In that period of time, I watched men come in and out of jail, in and out, and I'm scratching my head and I'm thinking, Rare, what's really going on out there? Because I'm sitting in jail and you just come in and come back out. You just come back in again. What's really going on? And obviously I know what's going on. It's a lack of opportunities out there. It's a lack of diversities in big corporations for letting people come into their doors. And it hurt me, it burnt me, I was upset. And in the 2.5 years I'm remand, I had my mum by my side, my missus by my side, you know, God bless them. And, you know, I was going up to court, my mum was like, yo, next month you come home, son. Next month came, didn't come home, back in court again. Next month you come home, son. And it burnt me, it broke me down as a man. It kind of messed with my head, but you have to be headstrong. And, you know, going on my journey, I met Carver, I met Robin, I met Daniel, and bringing hope did come to me. Came to me in many ways, you know. We sat down, we spoke as men. People from Handsworth, people from Aston, Lizelles, we sat down. And I'm not talking about your average man, I'm talking about the top man. And we all sat down and it became an environment where we all understood each other, we all learned from one and each another. We put our differences aside and it became a family. Not a gang, a family. Because I'm hearing all this gang. There's no such thing as gangs, it's family. And if it's good or it's bad, it's still a family. Because the biggest gangs I know of are the police out there, and it's just me straightforward, nothing against you guys. Anyway, I went to court one day, I got sentenced to 6 years. So I sat down in my cell, turned off the lights, threw out my TV, I thought, sure, I'm here for 6 years. And I got real with myself. I said, what are you gonna do now? You're sitting here for 6 years. And I looked on people coming in. I said, yo, what are you gonna do when you get out there? I'm gonna hit the road. I'm gonna do what I gotta do. I'm gonna feed the family, the man, the X, Y, Z. I said to myself, you know what? What course can I get on? What course can I do to better myself? And the officers weren't bothered. They didn't care. So I just pushed myself, I tried, and you know, Robin, you know, you watched me, you went through the journey with me, and he gave me that motivation to push myself. So I enrolled on a train track course, a building course, English, maths, every course. I left prison with raw, like 700 credits. No joke. I was promised a job on the train track lines, and you know, I carried on. My mum kept on motivating me, my missus stood by my side, and I came out, I wanted a job, changed my dress code, dashed away certain folly, didn't ride with certain man no more, because I needed to focus on me, I needed to focus on my family, because when I was inside, all the man I used to ride with, all the part, they weren't there for me. They weren't there. The ones who was there was them two ladies over there. And I love them to bits. Serious. You know what I mean? They're reading next to me. And, you know, not even just that, I jumped at one. I moved from one jail to another jail. And this is where bringing hope really showed me something. I was in one jail and a situation occurred and I got to get moved out the other jail. And I was down the block for a while, and I wanted to get hold of my parents, and I was like, you know, I've been moved to a different jail. So one day, I got on the phone Mom, I said, Mom, I moved jail. She's like, oh, do you know? So I'm like, how do you know? She's like, Carver and Robin told me. And these two men, I swear to God, like, you're good friends, and I appreciate you, and I love you unconditionally. Because the love what you lot showed me, no man on the road showed me that. No man inside there showed me that. So, you know, I love you guys, and I always got your back. I was around my mum's house praying with my mum, and I'm sitting in my cell, and I'm thinking, yo, I thought these guys was policemen. Look at them, the real, they're showing that unconditional love, they hold my hand through that whole journey. And I said to myself, when I get out, I'm not gonna be like the rest of them. I'm gonna actually walk with them. You know, I'm gonna try and better myself to help better others. So I'm starting my own business, but I jumped the gun again because I'm excited. I wanted a job, so I stepped out of jail. I got all these qualifications, qualified to work on the train tracks. Can I get a job? Sign up with our agency. Okay, I signed up with this agency, waiting a month. My time's running short, signed up with the next agency. Yeah, we find you a job, signed up. You have to do a next course. So I went to Manchester, all the way from Birmingham, and I've just come out of job, no money in my back pocket, found a way to get there, done the course, qualified. Can I get a job now? I sent out 250 CVs online. 250 CVs online. Real. And I couldn't get a job. I really couldn't get a job. It broke me, but my mum is a strong black woman. My mum said, yo son, whenever they knock you down, you get back up and you ride it. And I read it, and I carried on doing it, and I still couldn't get a job. So I said to myself, you know what, it's time to make the opportunity for yourself to help others, what's been in my position, like what's been through what I've been through. Because not everyone's strong like me, not everyone's got that mother, not everyone's got that partner, not everyone's got them friends. So, you know, as I said again, I love you all, thank you. And that was my journey, but at this present moment, I'm trying to open up my own business where I could help others what's been through the footsteps what I've been through, to help them find work, help them to come to somewhere where we all could gather, and you know, we could sit down and talk around the table, where we could, you know, find the opportunities for them. I'm trying to find diversities in companies where I could fill the gap from people from our streets to, like, you know, people like, I'll give you a prime example, the fire brigade, they got a lack of diversity. I've told them, listen, I'm that key, what you need to them streets. I could talk to them kids, because I'm from their background. Some of them kids look up to me, so I could talk to them to help you get into your organisation. And yes, they shut the doors on me off 1-2 times, but I kept on knocking on their doors and the doors are open. So there is hope, and if you keep your head up and you keep your heart strong and clean and pure, there is that opportunity and doors will open. Just never give up. Thank you very much.
eyelash, they're coming out.
Every man is there, man.
Mommy?
Yes, sir.
Give Mom a hand.
The reason I wanted to bring that, there's a key issue around re-entry back. And if we don't start to address it, then the structural oppression will continue. And then God help us, because the generation coming up is totally different. Now Nathan, you're a young man that, well, you're not young anymore, you're old now, you're getting handsome. So you're an older man that has been working with us. And obviously, I just wanted to quickly tag on to the work you were doing with us, moving on, and what Silence Wins is about. And then we're going to open it out and finish off. So over to Nathan. Give him a quick clap, please.
I think what you say after you hear Jason, the key thing that I want you to hear in what Jason was saying is the different silent screams and challenges that he went through. And one of the things that I have made up in my heart to do with myself through the experience of working with Bringing Hope was I created this project called the Silent Screams Project, which basically creates a therapeutic space for black men, not just black men, but men within the community to come together and talk. Because one of the fundamental things, and just like what Rev said earlier, we don't talk as men, and we're not socialized in talking. So one of the things that I've had to do with myself is train myself to become a professional counsellor. And one of the models in terms of people interested in modalities, is like the whole person-centered approach, which is founded by Carl Rogers. And that's about creating a space that's based on basically love, genuineness, unconditional positive regard. And what that means is that, just what Jason says, it doesn't matter who you are, what you've done. We're not going to judge you, but we're going to love you. And through this project, some of the things that we was able to achieve was we was able to take inner city guys from out of the inner city and take them to the countryside just to talk, and talk about topics like masculinity, talk about how do you deal with relationships, how do you deal with challenges, how do you deal with finances. We've done a series of probably over 24 forums where men come together and talk. I'm one of the main facilitators, and Robin and Carver. And one of the things we do as facilitators first is that we allow ourselves to be vulnerable in that space to talk about our own silent screams, so that the men are able to connect with us and understand that, wow, I'm not alone. And that's where the whole slogan, not alone, comes. Just to give you a little snapshot of why it was really birthed out, was probably 2 years ago, when I was bringing Hope even closer, we had 2 phone calls or 2 case studies that we were dealing with, where there was suicide of black men within the prison system. And I was kind of like what you could say key caseworker on one family, where I had to go into the house and actually pray with the family, support, lift songs, give letters of condolences, do practical things like bring patties and orange juice around to the house. But one of the things that really tugged at my heart was seeing the pain of mom and seeing the pain of the sisters and the family of a young man who, with this case, he actually left a suicide note. And that led me to go away. And this is important in terms of the story and why I believe that faith matters. Because I was so emotionally challenged by what I heard. And I believe there's people in this room right now that you've been challenged, that there's a pricking. You feel in your spirit a touch. But what I do, coming from a faith-based perspective, is that when I had that experience, I went away for the weekend, and I went to my knees and I prayed. And I said, Father, what can I do to engage with my brothers within the community? And I heard, and I waited, and I heard clearly back, go and engage men based on their silent screams. And that's what I started, just based on that word of instruction, I created a project. Through the project, we created therapeutic spaces. We created a music CD where there's men talking about stuff that they've gone through. One track, as an example, that's on this CD, is a young man who unfortunately lost his mom to a brain hemorrhage. And doing the track in tribute to his mom was the first time he actually spoke about the pain, the experience, the trauma that he went through in terms of losing his mom in a kind of sudden situation. So for me, in this closing, you can click through the slides, and if anything comes up, it comes up. But just going back to the agenda of faith matters. Faith matters. Personally, I believe we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And it's for us to connect back to the source. Because when we connect back to the source, we get the wisdom, we get the knowledge, we get the instruction. Let me say this last thing. I am living proof that there is a God in heaven that is true, that does, back up his promises. Because I was trapped in that lifestyle of fast money, crime and drugs and different things 11 years ago. And I made a decision to come to faith. And that was 11 years ago. My life has completely changed. And not one penny of illegal, funny, dirty money has come into my life since 11 years. And I'm a property owner. I am married. I have 4 children. I am running a business. And I've seen God himself move in my life. So my encouragement to Jason, to any young man, Rev, Sim, stay focused, brother. Do not watch what people are going to say. Critics are going to come. People are going to try and talk against you. But believe you me, that if you keep your eyes up and believe in the purpose that you've been born to do, I'm telling you, you will see fruit there in your life. God bless you.
Listening to what people have said today, I'm inspired. And I think we're all inspired. And I think, as Joan said earlier, we're all tired. The issue around youth criminality, around people dying, around people being stabbed, has been a long issue for as long as I can remember, as I'm sure for you guys, as long as you can remember as well. The time for talking has long gone. The time for action is now. Enough is enough. When there was an uptick in violent crime, particularly gun discharges, the back in the last year, a lot of people in the community say, well, why are you waiting until now when people have been shot and stabbed to then do something? Should you not have done something beforehand? And we've had groups set up in the past. Councillor Wazim mentioned some of the groups in his neighbourhood, in Handsworth and Nazars, where everyone felt great, where we could all get together, have a talk, you know, and try and think of a way we can all work together to combat this issue. And time again, they failed. Why did they fail? Because there wasn't the enthusiasm for collective working. Everyone saw an issue, everyone saw a problem, but no one was able to connect the dots and say, okay, you're from a faith organisation, you're from a women's organisation, you're from the police. How are we going to connect the dots to make sure that we can all have a collective response, that we can all move forward? And I'm struck by what Craig said earlier. You said, Craig, meet the need before the faith. And I agree with that. The question that we came with today was, does faith matter? Of course it matters. Because most people have a faith system they adhere to, whether it be the Christian faith, the Sikh faith, Hindu faith, Muslim faith, or whatever faith may be. But I matter. You matter. We matter as a community, and we've got to think a lot closely about how we work together to ensure that the issues that we have are confronted and done away with. When I was at school, I went to Great Bar School. If anyone knows Great Bar School? Yeah? All right. Okay. I used to go to Newtown every day. Does anyone know Burby Park in Newtown? Yeah? Yeah? All right. Okay. I used to go to Burby Park every single day. Because most of my friends were from Newtown, Aston, Nazars, and Handsworth. And that's where we used to go. We used to go there to play basketball, and play football. You know, we just hang around and, you know, have fun. One day, I couldn't go. I had homework to do, or whatever the case was, but I couldn't make it. And one of my good friends, he was in the park as usual, playing basketball, and a group of guys came over and said, "Give me your ball." I ain't giving you my ball. Go away. So if you don't give me the ball, we're going to do something to you. My friend decided, no, I'm going to stay here and do what I always do. My friend, unfortunately, was subject to attack. The lads who asked for the ball had baseball bats, whacked him on the face multiple times, and unfortunately he suffered life-changing injuries, and his face permanently disfigured. That's a minor story compared to some of the stories that we've heard today. We heard from Jason earlier, we heard from Nathan, we've heard from Craig. We've heard from many people about some of their own stories. And I bet you, whether you're from the neighbourhood I'm from, or from that Craig's from, or wherever from, you know somebody who's been affected by these issues. The Commission is not set up to be a talking shop. We've had that. Those days are long gone. The Commission is set up to have a lasting legacy. But the most important part of the Commission is, as the Commission said earlier, we cannot arrest our way out of the issue. We've got to make sure that communities take the lead on this. We'll help. We'll help with resources, whether it be financial, whether it be human resources. We'll provide venues where we can have a proper conversation, a realistic conversation about what issues are. But unless communities take the ownership, unless communities say enough is enough, we've all got to find a solution to this, it's not going to work. This Commission won't work if it's top down. It's got to bottom up. Rev said earlier for people to come up with a statement about what tonight is all about. For me, the statement is this: are we reluctantly doing the minimum, or are we willingly doing the maximum to change the situation? And by that I mean this. I said to you a moment ago, we're all here for a purpose. You wouldn't be here if we didn't all sing from the same hymn sheet. I think there's a real issue we've got to address. Well, what are we actually doing individually? Forget collective for a moment, individually, to see what we can do to work together. What are we doing individually to change our mindset towards people? If you're a pastor, if you're a bishop, if you're an imam, what are you doing to talk to our young people? Craig, you couldn't have said it better if you tried, and I couldn't say it better than you did at all. Need must come before faith. Need must come before the police. Need must come before any third sector organisation. The needs of our young people always come first before we do. The time for silo thinking and for trying to palm issues on somebody else are long gone. And I'm so happy and so thrilled that we're all here today to have a real conversation about what the issues are, and to have people who have lived through those experiences come here, feel comfortable to share their experience and share their stories. Because this isn't going to work unless we include those people into our thinking. The only downside of today is that I would have loved to have had more young people. More young people. Because this commission is focused towards our young people. We need to make sure that if we're going to have a piece of work that has a lasting legacy, that our young people are represented, not just through their stories, not just through their experiences, but through what they want to do going forward. And I'm very, very adamant that this commission is going to work, because you are here. We're going to continue doing the work that we're doing. We're going to continue talking to our faith groups. We're going to continue talking to our partners, continue talking to our friends, not just in Birmingham, but in Manchester and London, across the country, and to ensure that we have a real lasting approach to this. Because Joan's tired, the Rev's tired, I'm tired, we're all tired. But the next step is not just being in our sorrows and saying boo-hoo me, but to say, what are we going to do moving this forward? So once again, thank you so much to Carver, to the Rev, to Bringing Hope, to our office, to Dale, the Assistant Chief, everybody who's made the effort and time to be here. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. This will not be the last time you see me, last time you see us. We're going to be in your face, and I make no apologies about that. We need to be in your face, and you need to be in the face of the people in our communities as well, because we need to make sure people understand our message. The days where young people feel that taking the criminal route is their only option are long gone, and we need to make sure we jump on the renaissance that's happening in Birmingham and in this region. HS2. We've got the National College that's opening in September this year in Aston. We've got the manufacturing hub for HS2 opening in Aston also. There are jobs and opportunities for our young people. It's not just a time of despair, but a time of hope and opportunity. And we've got to make sure that the work we do in this room extends to those opportunities and extends to our young people, so we all feel that we are doing what we can do to ensure our young people lead a prosperous life. So thank you so much once again.
Thank you, Ashley. You can get right now, he's calling me Rev. Look, okay, next steps. What's happening from here is this. All of today's dialogue, thoughts, perspectives will be captured. From there, we're going to feed that into the final report or commission and then recommendation. There was a contact sheet that was going around. Where is that now? Who's got that? Anyone got that?
It's down on reception.
The one that was floating around in here? Who's got that? Yeah, we need to find, because I need to ensure that we've got your email. One of the next steps is that, listen, and we can go. One of the next steps, is that we're going to continue the networking and the building. So that's one of the actions. And then we will have to have a more deeper discussion of why and what does it mean to move forward. And the final thought is this. When you understand the need, you can meet the demand. And that's what I'm going away with. When we understand the need, we can then meet the demand. And to meet the demand, we need to understand the need. So hashtag
Faith matters.
you see? Hashtag okay.
My name is Iana Shaudia, representing the Damilola Taylor Foundation. And this event today, it's long overdue, and I'm very happy that the Commission has come together. This was a consultation to find out ways forward, getting out of anger, getting out of not knowing, helplessness, hopelessness, not just through faith, but through leadership as well. Because we heard from people who were victims, we heard from parents of victims, we heard from people who were in there, people who were in the gangs, people who from a point of view, I know that for you to commit what the society calls a crime, at that point in time you thought it was right. And for you to have a sense of remorse and get out of it and not knowing where to go, who to turn to. And this commission has been able to pull you out. We heard a lot of testimonies, I can call it because I'm Christian, of those who have come out through faith that needs identified with. And our big shots, they are not just out there doing business. They are out there. They're out there helping others to get out of what they think is a scum, of what the society is condemning them for. And that tells me there is light at the end of the tunnel in every situation. I'm very glad I was here today, and I commend the efforts because we heard from the academics' point of view, we heard from researchers, yes, we heard from everybody. Every spectrum of the society was represented. And I do hope this consultation will lead to influencing policies that will affect and impact positively on the youth of Birmingham. And maybe, just maybe, by the time we come back together in another 5 years, the story about Birmingham and the map will be a different story. Thank you.
I'm Bishop James Herbert. I'm here representing Prison Link and also the Life and Light Fellowship Church. First and foremost, the question was asked about other churches and church leaders being here. I think one of the things we have to realise when you organise these conferences, if you invite church leaders, I believe it should be church leaders who attend, because every time we come to a meeting where you've invited church leaders and community people are there as well, it seems to be a bash the church time as opposed to giving the church credit for what it's doing. Churches have a responsibility not just to one sector of the community. Churches has a responsibility for the whole community. Therefore, when you're talking about churches, and we're talking about specifically dealing with youth issues or gang issues, a church has to deal with a plethora of issues. And the key thing that the church needs to do is making sure that it is serving the whole community. One of the things that I've learned from today with regards to the event that Bringing Hope has put on is really that what I've often said churches need to be doing is really the same thing that I've often said, is to focus on the development of individuals. If you're talking about a person, you have to realize what you have to do when that person is young to help to develop them. One of the key things that I recognize here again is what I've often said, the rites of passage. Moving young people from children into adulthood is absolutely crucial. I believe that churches are ideally placed to do just that. Churches need to introduce more youth programs to make sure that the energy of young people is enhanced correctly to help them to move on to do that. Where churches need to help when things have gone wrong is to be involved in initiatives in the community that will help sort that problem. Because sometimes to bring a problem into the church is not the solution, and you have to be very clear on what you're trying to do for your church. Hence, I'm involved in Prison Link, I'm involved in other groups, because I realise that we have to be involved in our community in a very positive way. The other key thing that I realised from what Bringing Hope was saying is that you have to focus on helping that individual to change. You're not going to help an individual to change by pampering to the things that they used to do. And if an individual is going to engage with the church, it has to be a two-way engagement. The individual has to engage on the terms of the church, and the church has to engage on the terms of that individual. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I don't think we're acknowledging enough that what the church is doing. What I always feel challenged about is when I come to these, is nobody says specifically what you want the church to do. You're always making very general, broad statements about the church isn't doing this, the church isn't doing that. Let's be specific and say what you want the church to do, and then the church could respond specifically and says, I can or I can't do that. But I thought it was a brilliant event, and thank you very much. And I do intend to really keep focused on it. But I will sort of come back again and says, if you're calling church leaders together, church leaders, their time is really valuable. I've spent 4 hours here today, and I value the 4 hours that I've spent. But I also feel that you have to be realistic and says, I'm not coming to any meeting to defend where I am, because that's not what I've been asked to do. I've not been called to preach the gospel, to defend it. I've been called here to work with the community, and I want to support Bringing Hope. I want to support every organisation that is about changing our community. The church is an instrumental part of our community, and the work that we are going to do is very effective. Thank you.